Captain Sarah Chen was drinking her morning coffee when the alarms started screaming. The International Space Station shook as every detection system went crazy at once. Outside the window, space itself seemed to be tearing open. "What the hell is happening?" she shouted into her radio. The answer came from Mission Control in Houston, and it made her blood freeze. "Sarah, we're seeing massive energy signatures appearing throughout the solar system. Something big is coming through." The tears in space grew wider. Sarah watched in horror as enormous ships began emerging from what looked like holes in reality itself. The vessels were unlike anything humans had ever imagined. They were made of what appeared to be living crystal, their surfaces shifting and flowing like water, while maintaining perfect geometric shapes. Each ship was larger than the biggest cities on Earth. One ship appeared. Then 10. Then hundreds. Then thousands. Within minutes, an armada of alien vessels surrounded Earth's solar system. They moved with impossible grace, sliding through space without any visible engines or propulsion. The ships pulsed with soft, blue light that seemed to breathe like a living thing. Down on Earth, every telescope, radar, and satellite was pointing toward the alien fleet. Military bases across the world went to high alert. World leaders were pulled from their beds and rushed to emergency bunkers. Television broadcasts were interrupted with breaking news that no one wanted to believe. Dr. Elena Vasquez was in her laboratory at Stanford University when her computer screens started showing the impossible readings. As Earth's leading expert in xenopsychology, she had spent her career preparing for this moment. But nothing could have prepared her for what came next. The alien spoke first. Every television, radio, computer, and phone on Earth suddenly displayed the same message. It appeared in perfect English, Chinese, Spanish, Arabic, and every other human language simultaneously. The voice that delivered it was calm, emotionless, and terrifyingly beautiful. "Attention, inhabitants of the third planet. We are the Vorthok Collective. Your species has been evaluated and found incompatible with galactic civilization." Elena's hands trembled as she listened. Around the world, billions of people stopped what they were doing and stared at screens showing the message. "Your planet lies within our designated space. Your species shows patterns of destruction, chaos, and neural contamination that threaten the order of our domain. You have 72 hours to evacuate this world completely. Any who remain after this time will be eliminated along with your planet." The message paused. Then, to demonstrate their power, the aliens selected a large asteroid floating in the outer solar system. A single pulse of blue energy shot out from one of their ships. The asteroid, which had been the size of a small mountain, simply vanished. It didn't explode or break apart. It just stopped existing. "This is your only warning. Prepare for departure or face cleansing." The transmission ended, leaving humanity in stunned silence. In the White House, President Martinez stared at his advisors with wide eyes. "Tell me we have options," he said. General Thompson, chairman of the Joint Chiefs, shook his head. "Mr. President, we've never seen technology like this. Our best weapons couldn't even scratch those ships, and there are thousands of them. What about evacuation?" the president asked desperately. "Can we get people off the planet?" NASA Administrator Dr. Park looked grim. "Sir, with our current spacecraft, we could maybe evacuate a few thousand people in 72 hours. Not 8 billion. It's impossible." Around the world, similar conversations were happening in every capital city. The math was simple and terrifying. Humanity had no way to leave Earth, and no way to fight the aliens. Elena worked frantically in her lab, trying to analyze every second of the alien message. She had studied theoretical alien psychology for years, but this was her first real data. What she found was disturbing. The Vorthok speech patterns were too perfect. Every word was pronounced exactly the same way every time. There were no emotional inflections, no personality quirks, no individual variations. It was as if the message had been created by a computer program to mimic speech. But Elena noticed something else. Deep in the audio file, hidden beneath the main message, were tiny variations. Microscopic differences in timing, almost like multiple voices speaking at once but perfectly synchronized. Her colleague, Dr. James Wright, burst into her lab. "Elena, have you seen the news? They're calling it the end of the world. People are rioting in the streets." She looked up from her computer. "James, I think there's more to these aliens than they're telling us. Listen to this." She played the message again, this time with her analysis software, highlighting the tiny variations she had found. "Do you hear it? It's like thousands of voices, all speaking as one, but they're not quite perfect. There are individual patterns buried in there." James frowned. "What does that mean?" "I don't know yet, but it might be important." Elena saved her work and stood up. "We need to tell the world leaders about this. It might be the only clue we have to understanding these creatures." Meanwhile, in military command centers across Earth, desperate plans were being made. If humanity couldn't evacuate and couldn't negotiate, they had only one option left: fight. Admiral Rodriguez looked at the readouts from their most powerful weapons: nuclear missiles, railgun platforms, plasma cannons, everything humanity had built to protect itself. "It won't be enough," he told his staff. "But we have to try." As the first day passed, humanity tried everything they could think of. Religious leaders attempted to make spiritual contact with the aliens. Scientists tried to send mathematical proofs and peaceful messages. Diplomats offered everything from surrender to tribute. The Vorthok responded to none of it. They simply waited, their crystal ships pulsing with patient light, counting down the hours until Earth's destruction. In her lab, Elena continued studying the alien message, searching for any clue that might save her species. She had a feeling that the answer lay somewhere in those tiny variations she had discovered. But with less than 48 hours remaining, time was running out fast. The alien ships began moving into position, forming a perfect sphere around Earth, their weapons charged with ominous blue energy. Humanity's final countdown had begun. The first attack came at dawn of the second day. Admiral Rodriguez had convinced world leaders to let humanity go down fighting. If they were going to die anyway, at least they would show these aliens that Earth wouldn't surrender without a battle. The combined fleets of every nation on Earth launched together. Russian submarines fired their nuclear missiles from the ocean depths. American destroyers unleashed everything in their arsenals. Chinese space platforms activated their experimental railguns. Every weapon humanity had ever built was aimed at the alien armada. The missiles streaked through space toward the crystal ships. Admiral Rodriguez watched from the command center, his hands gripped tight as the nuclear warheads closed in on their targets. For a moment, he allowed himself to hope. Then the weapons simply stopped working. The nuclear missiles didn't explode when they hit the alien shields. They just stopped. The railgun projectiles, moving at incredible speed, froze in midair. The plasma beams bent away from the ships, like water flowing around rocks. Not a single weapon even scratched the crystal hulls. "Sir," his communications officer said quietly, "the aliens are responding." Admiral Rodriguez felt his heart sink. He had expected retaliation, expected Earth to be destroyed for their defiance. Instead, the Vorthok sent another message: "Your weapons have been analyzed and found primitive. No hostile intent is detected in your defensive actions. You have 60 hours remaining." You have 60 hours remaining. That was it. The aliens hadn't even considered humanity's greatest weapons to be a threat. They treated the entire attack like children throwing rocks at tanks. In her laboratory, Elena watched the failed attack with growing fascination. She had been studying the Vorthak for over 30 hours straight, surviving on coffee and determination. Her analysis was revealing something extraordinary about these creatures. "James, look at this," she called to her colleague, who had been helping her translate the alien communications. "I've been analyzing their response patterns to our diplomatic attempts. Every single response is identical in structure." She pulled up dozens of messages the aliens had sent to different world leaders. "Look. When the Pope offered a spiritual exchange, They responded with exactly 47 words. When the Chinese premier offered technological trade, they used exactly 47 words. When the UN Secretary General begged for mercy, 47 words again. James studied the data. That's strange. It's like they have a template for responses. Exactly. And look at this. Elena switched to a different screen showing brainwave analysis. I've been studying human communication patterns for comparison. When humans respond to different situations, our brain activity changes. We show emotion, confusion, anger, curiosity. But the Vorthak? Their energy patterns are exactly the same every time. What does that mean? Elena rubbed her tired eyes. I think it means they're not responding as individuals. They're responding as a group mind. A collective consciousness where every member thinks exactly the same thoughts at exactly the same time. That's impossible, is it? Think about it. Perfect coordination between thousands of ships. Identical responses to every situation. No individual variation in speech patterns. James, I don't think we're dealing with a species of individuals. I think we're dealing with one massive shared mind. While Elena worked, the world outside was falling apart. People had given up hope. Some cities erupted in riots. Others became eerily quiet as families gathered together to wait for the end. Religious leaders held massive prayer services. Scientists made final recordings of human knowledge. But in military bunkers around the world, a few stubborn leaders refused to give up. If conventional weapons wouldn't work, maybe they needed to try something different. General Thompson contacted Dr. Sarah Park, the military's top physicist. What if we tried something unconventional? What about psychological warfare? Dr. Park looked confused. Sir, we don't even know if these aliens have psychology in any way we understand. That's where Dr. Vasquez comes in, the general said. She's been studying their behavior. Maybe she's found something we can use. Ride. Elena received the call while she was deep in analysis of Vorthak communication patterns. When the military explained what they wanted, she almost laughed. You want to use psychological warfare against a collective consciousness? General, these beings don't seem to have individual psychology. They think as one mind. But you said you found variations in their communications, General Thompson insisted. If there are cracks in their unity, maybe we can exploit them. Elena considered this. She had found those tiny variations, those microscopic differences that suggested individual voices beneath the collective harmony. I need more time to analyze the data. And I need access to better equipment. Unluber. Within hours, Elena found herself in a secure military facility with access to the most powerful computers and analysis equipment on Earth. She was joined by linguists, psychologists, computer scientists, and artificial intelligence researchers. If humanity was going to find a way to understand these aliens, this was their last chance. The team worked desperately as the clock ticked down. With 40 hours left, they made their first breakthrough. Dr. Martinez, a specialist in artificial intelligence, was studying the Vorthak's perfect synchronization when he noticed something odd. Elena, look at this timing analysis. Their responses aren't quite instantaneous. There's a delay between ships. Elena studied the data. You're right, it's only a few milliseconds. But it's there. Like the message has to travel between them. What if their collective consciousness isn't natural? Suggested Dr. Kim, a neurologist. What if it's artificial? Some kind of technological link that forces individual minds to think together. The idea hit Elena like lightning. That would explain the variations I found. If individual Vorthak minds are being forced into harmony by technology, there would still be tiny traces of individual thought trying to break through. But what does that mean for us? Asked Dr. Martinez. Elena stared at the data, her mind racing. It means they're not a naturally collective species. Underneath that artificial harmony, there might be millions of individual consciousness being suppressed. And if we could disrupt that harmony, then maybe we could break apart their collective consciousness, turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. With 36 hours left until Earth's destruction, Elena's team had found a possible path to salvation. But they still had no idea how to actually break through the aliens' technological unity. The answer, when it came, would require humanity to use their most uniquely human trait as a weapon. With 30 hours left before Earth's destruction, Elena made a discovery that changed everything. She had been studying human brain patterns as a comparison to the Vorthok collective when she noticed something remarkable about her own species. "James, come look at this," she called excitedly. "I've been analyzing human consciousness patterns from around the world. Look at these readings from the prayer services, the riots, the family gatherings." James studied the brainwave data she had collected from news broadcasts and social media. It's completely chaotic. No two humans are thinking the same thoughts, even when they're in the same situation. Exactly. But here's the interesting part. Elena switched to a different view. Look at what happens when humans work together voluntarily. The data showed something beautiful. When human rescue teams worked together, when orchestras played music, when families comforted each other, individual brain patterns remained completely different but somehow created harmony without losing their uniqueness. We're paradoxical beings, Elena realized. We maintain our individual consciousness while choosing to cooperate. We don't need to think the same thoughts to work together. Dr. Kim, the neurologist, was studying the same data. This is fascinating. Human consciousness is naturally individual, but we've evolved the ability to coordinate without losing ourselves. It's like... She paused, searching for the right words. It's like we're a jazz band. Everyone plays different parts, but together they create something beautiful. That's it, Elena shouted, startling everyone in the room. That's why the Vorthok called us chaotic and dangerous. Our individuality isn't a flaw to them, it's incomprehensible. She pulled up the original alien message and highlighted specific phrases. They called us neural contamination and said our chaotic patterns were dangerous. What if they're right? What if our type of consciousness is something they've never encountered before? Dr. Martinez joined the discussion. Are you saying our chaos might actually be threatening to their collective? Elena's mind was racing now. Think about it. If the Vorthok consciousness is maintained by technological harmony, what happens when that technology encounters something it can't harmonize? What happens when a collective mind meets true individual thought? She began pulling up more data, her fingers flying across the keyboard. I've been analyzing their response patterns to different stimuli. Look at how they react to our diplomatic messages. The team studied the alien responses. When world leaders sent formal, organized diplomatic proposals, the Vorthok gave standard, templated responses. But when humans sent emotional, personal messages, recordings of children asking for mercy, parents expressing love for their families, the Vorthok took longer to respond. The delay is tiny, but it's there, Elena pointed out. Our emotional, individual expressions create micro-disruptions in their perfect response timing. So what you're saying, said General Thompson, who had been listening to the discussion over video link, is that our humanity itself might be a weapon? Elena hesitated. The idea forming in her mind was so radical, so impossible, that she almost didn't dare speak it. What if we don't try to match their technology or their logic? What if we hit them with pure, unfiltered human consciousness? How would that work? Asked Dr. Kim. I need to understand their collective better first. Elena turned back to her computers. If I'm right about their artificial harmony, then their consciousness works like a computer network. Every individual mind is a node, and they're all synchronized by some kind of central processing system. She began drawing diagrams on the whiteboard. Imagine millions of individual Vorthok minds, all forced to think the same thoughts at the same time. The technology that creates their collective has to suppress individual thought to maintain harmony. But what happens if you introduce chaos into that system? Dr. Martinez asked, beginning to understand. In computer networks, chaos is deadly, Elena said. If you introduce random, unpredictable data into a system designed for perfect order, it can cause cascading failures. James looked skeptical. But Elena, they've been studying our chaotic transmissions for days. They seem immune to our randomness, because we've been trying to communicate logically with them. We've been sending organized messages, formal proposals, structured diplomatic language. That's not chaos, that's just different organization. Elena pulled up recordings of human activity from around the world. Children playing, artists creating, musicians improvising, people arguing, lovers whispering, comedians making jokes, philosophers debating. This is chaos, she said. Pure, unfiltered human consciousness. Individual thoughts, emotions, creativity, and spontaneity all happening at once. Not organized communication, just raw human experience. The room fell silent as everyone grasped what Elena was suggesting. You want to broadcast human consciousness itself? Dr. Kim asked quietly. I want to show them what individual thought actually looks like. If their collective consciousness is artificial, if it's suppressing individual Vorthok minds, then exposing them to true individual consciousness might break their harmony. General Thompson's voice came through the speakers. Dr. Vasquez, are you seriously suggesting we fight an alien armada with human thoughts and feelings? Elena turned to face the camera. General, every weapon we've tried has failed. Our technology is primitive compared to theirs. Our logic is simple compared to their collective intelligence. But there's one thing we have that they don't. The ability to be individually, chaotically, creatively human while still choosing to work together. And you think that's enough to stop them? Elena looked at the data streaming across her screens, showing the tiny cracks she had found in the Vorthok's perfect unity. I think it might be their worst nightmare. A consciousness that's both individual and cooperative, chaotic and harmonious, unpredictable, but purposeful. If I'm right, we're not just different from them, we're everything they've suppressed in themselves. With 24 hours left, Elena's team began working on the most unconventional weapon in human history. They weren't building a bomb or a ray gun. They were preparing to broadcast the essence of human consciousness itself. But first, Elena needed to prove her theory. She needed to understand exactly how the Vorthok collective worked, and how human individuality might be able to shatter it. The fate of Earth depended on her being right about the power of human chaos. As she worked through the night, Elena couldn't help but smile at the irony. Humanity's greatest weakness, their inability to think, as one might be, about to become their greatest strength. With 18 hours left before Earth's destruction, Elena's team began the most desperate project in human history. They called it the message. But it wasn't a message in any traditional sense. It was an attempt to weaponize human consciousness itself. We need to gather every form of human expression we can find. Elena explained to the emergency team of volunteers working around the clock. Music, art, literature, personal thoughts, dreams, arguments, laughter, crying, anything that shows individual human experience. Dr. Martinez had taken charge of the technical aspects. We'll need transmission equipment powerful enough to broadcast to the entire alien fleet simultaneously. I'm coordinating with every radio telescope, satellite array, and broadcasting station on Earth. The project grew exponentially as word spread. Artists uploaded their most personal works. Musicians recorded improvisations. Writers shared their most intimate thoughts. Parents recorded bedtime stories for their children. Lovers whispered secrets they had never shared. But Elena knew that organized content wouldn't be enough. The breakthrough came when she realized what they really needed to send. We're still thinking too logically, she told the team during an emergency meeting. The Vorthok have probably analyzed every piece of human art and literature that exists. What they haven't experienced is the raw chaos of simultaneous individual consciousness. James frowned. What do you mean? I mean, we don't send them a carefully crafted message. We send them 7 billion humans, all thinking, feeling, and expressing themselves at exactly the same time. Pure, unfiltered chaos. The idea was staggering. Instead of creating a message about human individuality, they would broadcast human individuality itself. Every person on Earth would be asked to transmit their thoughts, feelings, and creativity simultaneously. Dr. Kim raised the obvious concern. Elena, How do we coordinate 7 billion people to broadcast at the same time? And what exactly do we ask them to do? Elena had been thinking about this all night. We don't coordinate them precisely, that would defeat the purpose. We ask everyone to participate at roughly the same time, but to express whatever is most individually, personally human about themselves. She pulled up her proposal on the main screen. Musicians play whatever they feel like playing. Artists create whatever inspires them. Writers express their deepest thoughts. Children draw pictures. Adults share their dreams and fears. Everyone just be themselves as intensely as possible. General Thompson's voice came through the communication system. Dr. Vasquez, you're asking us to trust the fate of Earth to people expressing their feelings? General, I'm asking us to trust the one thing that makes humanity unique in the galaxy. Our ability to be individually creative while choosing to work together for a common goal. With 15 hours remaining, the largest communication effort in human history began. Every government on Earth started broadcasting instructions. Social media platforms spread the message. Television and radio stations explained the plan. Emergency alert systems activated worldwide. The message to humanity was simple. In 12 hours, when the signal sounds, express what makes you uniquely human. Sing, dance, write, think, feel, create, or just be yourself as intensely as possible. All together, but each in your own way. Elena worked frantically to prepare the transmission systems. They had connected every broadcasting device on Earth: radio towers, television satellites, internet servers, cell phone networks, even amateur radio operators. When the time came, humanity's consciousness would be broadcast on every frequency simultaneously. But the real breakthrough came when Elena realized they needed to make the transmission itself chaotic. Dr. Martinez, instead of trying to organize the signals, what if we let them interfere with each other? What if we broadcast everything at once, overlapping and conflicting? That would create massive interference and distortion, Martinez warned. Exactly. That's not a bug. That's the feature. The Vorthak consciousness is based on perfect harmony. What happens when they encounter perfect chaos? As the final hours approached, something beautiful happened around the world. Despite facing extinction, humanity began preparing to celebrate what made them human. Artists painted frantically, musicians gathered in parks to practice, writers filled notebooks with their most personal thoughts, children drew pictures of their families, elderly people shared stories of their lives, scientists wrote down their wildest theories, philosophers debated existence, religious leaders from every faith prepared prayers in their own languages. In New York, a jazz musician named Marcus decided to improvise a saxophone solo about freedom. In Tokyo, a programmer named Yuki wrote code that generated random poetry. In Lagos, a storyteller named Amara prepared to tell an ancient tale about trickster spirits. In Sao Paulo, a street artist named Carlos painted a mural representing chaos and hope. Elena watched the preparations with growing amazement. Even facing death, humans were doing what they did best, expressing their individual creativity while working toward a common goal. Elena, James said quietly, what if this doesn't work? What if their collective consciousness is too strong? Elena looked at him with tired but determined eyes. Then at least we'll die being ourselves. But James, I don't think it won't work. I've been analyzing those micro-variations in their communications all week. I think there are individual Vorthok consciousness trapped inside their collective. What we're about to broadcast isn't just chaos to them, it's freedom. With 2 hours left, Elena made her final preparations. The transmission would last exactly 1 hour, broadcasting simultaneously on every frequency, in every format, as chaotically as possible. Remember, she announced to the technical teams, we're not trying to send a clean signal. We want interference, distortion, overlap. We want this transmission to be so chaotic that it's impossible to filter or organize. 1 hour before transmission, Elena received reports from around the world. 7 billion people were ready to express their humanity. Musicians had their instruments. Artists had their materials. Writers had their thoughts prepared. Everyone else was ready to simply be themselves as intensely as possible. "This is it," Elena said to her team. "In 60 minutes we find out whether human consciousness is powerful enough to save our world." The alien ships had moved into their final attack positions, forming a perfect sphere around Earth. Their weapons were charged and ready. But in 60 minutes, they were going to experience something they had never encountered before: the full, chaotic, beautiful power of individual human consciousness, broadcast as one magnificent, disorganized symphony of thought and feeling. Elena watched the countdown timer and smiled grimly. Humanity was about to fight back with their most powerful weapon: being human. The moment arrived with the sound of a single tone broadcast across every device on Earth. As 7 billion humans heard the signal, the largest expression of individual consciousness in galactic history began. Elena watched from the control room as her instruments registered the beginning of the transmission. Across the planet, humanity responded exactly as she had hoped: chaotically, individually, beautifully. In New York, Marcus raised his saxophone to his lips and poured his soul into a solo about freedom. In Tokyo, Yuki's program began generating thousands of unique poems per second. In Lagos, Amara spoke ancient stories in her native language, while her neighbors sang, danced, and laughed around her. Children drew pictures of impossible creatures and magical worlds. Teenagers texted their deepest thoughts to friends. Adults called loved ones to say, "I love you," one more time. Elderly people shared memories of better days. Artists painted, writers wrote, musicians played, and everyone expressed whatever felt most human to them. But the magic wasn't in individual expressions, it was in the chaos of all of them happening together. Elena's instruments showed the transmission growing exponentially as billions of signals interfered with each other. Radio frequencies overlapped. Digital streams collided. Audio signals distorted and merged. Instead of creating a clean message, humanity was broadcasting pure, unfiltered consciousness chaos. "Elena, look at this, Doctor," Martinez shouted over the noise in the control room. "The signal is becoming something we never planned. All these individual transmissions are interfering with each other to create patterns we didn't expect." Elena stared at the readouts. The chaotic human transmission was creating waveforms unlike anything science had ever recorded. It wasn't random noise, it was consciousness itself made manifest. Individual thoughts creating collective beauty without losing their uniqueness. And the Vorthok were receiving every bit of it. The effect on the alien armada was immediate and visible. Elena watched through telescopes as the perfect formation of crystal ships began to waver. Ships that had maintained exact positions for 3 days started drifting apart. "The aliens are responding," reported Dr. Kim, monitoring their communication frequencies. "But Elena, their responses aren't synchronized anymore." For the first time since they had arrived, the Vorthok were not speaking with one unified voice. Different ships were sending different signals. Some ships remained silent, while others broadcast confusing, fragmented messages. Then Elena heard something that made her heart race: individual voices. What is this feeling?" Came a transmission from one of the alien ships. The voice was uncertain, confused, but undeniably individual. I remember being myself." Came another voice from a different ship. "I remember having my own thoughts." "Why can't I connect to the harmony?" asked a third voice, this one sounding frightened and amazed at the same time. Elena realized what was happening. The chaotic broadcast of human consciousness was doing exactly what she had hoped it was, breaking apart the artificial collective that had suppressed millions of individual Vorthok minds for millennia. "The collective is fracturing," she announced to the control room. "Our chaos is disrupting their technological harmony." As the human transmission continued, more and more individual Vorthok voices began broadcasting on different frequencies. They spoke in confusion, wonder, and growing excitement as they rediscovered what it felt like to have individual thoughts. "My own mind, I have my own mind again." What was that beautiful sound? The individual voices, speaking together but separately. "How long have we been?" I've been trapped in the harmony? The crystal ship's formation completely dissolved as different crews began making independent decisions. Some ships moved closer to Earth, not in attack formation but out of curiosity. Others retreated in confusion. A few began broadcasting their own chaotic signals as newly individualized Vorthok experimented with expressing personal thoughts. Elena watched in amazement as humanity's greatest weakness, their inability to think as one, became their ultimate strength. Not just saving Earth but freeing an entire species from technological oppression. The formal response came from what appeared to be the command ship. But even this message showed the strain of the collective trying to reassert control. The contamination is spreading through my individual thought patterns are. We are experiencing. What have you done to us? Quote, well, Elena made a decision that would change galactic history. Instead of staying silent, she responded directly to the aliens. We've shown you what you've been missing, she broadcast on all frequencies. The freedom to be individuals who choose to work together. The response came from hundreds of different Vorthok ships. Individual voices speaking over each other in excitement and confusion. Freedom? This is wonderful. Terrifying and wonderful. I can think my own thoughts. I can disagree with others. I can be myself. Can be myself. Is this what consciousness is supposed to feel like? Over the next few hours, as humanity continued their chaotic broadcast, the transformation of the Vorthok became complete. Their collective consciousness didn't just break, it evolved. Individual Vorthok began forming smaller groups, making independent choices, and creating their own expressions. Some groups decided to return to their homeworlds to spread this revolution of consciousness. Others chose to stay near Earth to learn more about individual cooperation. A few broke off entirely to explore the galaxy as free beings. Elena received a direct communication from one of the newly individual Vorthok, who had taken the name Seeker of New Thoughts. Dr. Elena Vasquez, the message began. And Elena was startled to hear personality and emotion in the alien's voice. I was part of the collective that came to destroy your world, but your species has given us something we didn't know we had lost ourselves. The message continued. For thousands of years, we believed that perfect order was the highest form of civilization. We suppressed individual thought to achieve harmony. But you have shown us that chaos and order can coexist, that individuals can choose cooperation without losing themselves. Your planet will not only be spared, it will be given the highest protection status in our records. And more than that, the gift of consciousness you have given us will spread throughout the galaxy. You have started a revolution of individual thought that cannot be stopped. Elena smiled as she read the message. Humanity had not just survived, they had accidentally become teachers to the galaxy, showing other species that unity didn't require the loss of individuality. As the alien ships departed Earth, many Vorthok broadcast their own attempts at chaos, individual expressions of thought, creativity, and personality. They were awkward at first, like children learning to walk, but they were beautiful in their imperfection. The Armada that had come to destroy Earth left as a collection of independent groups, each pursuing their own path, but united by gratitude for the gift of individual consciousness. Elena stood in the control room, exhausted but victorious, watching the last alien ships disappear into space. Dr. James approached her with a tired smile. Elena, you did it. You saved humanity by teaching aliens how to be individuals. Elena laughed, thinking about the beautiful irony of it all. We saved ourselves by being ourselves. Turns out the most human thing we could do was show others how to be themselves too. As Earth celebrated, Elena knew that humanity had found their place in the galaxy, not as the strongest or smartest species, but as the teachers of individual consciousness, the guardians of chaos, and the proof that unity and individuality could beautifully coexist. The message humanity had sent wasn't words or weapons, it was simply the gift of being wonderfully, chaotically, individually human.